Welcome to European History with Dr. Brovkin. Today I'm beginning a new series, a new playlist, which I shall call Issues in Contemporary Politics. And today's presentation is devoted to a conservative revolutionary in France, Eric Zemmour. If you speak French and if you follow the French media, there's no need for you to watch this presentation. But if you don't, this is a short roundup. The reason it is important is that I call him a conservative revolutionary a la Trump in France. There are some similarities, which I will discuss later, with Donald Trump, but actually it is a French political phenomenon that is taking France by a storm. As you all probably know, in about 6 months, in April 2022, there will be presidential elections in France, and Eric Zemmour has not yet announced that he was going to run. But without even announcing it, he is now number 2 in the polls, right after President. And there are 2 rounds. And in order to qualify for the first round, you have to have a certain support and registration, etc. And there's no doubt that he will make it into the first round. Now, the winner of the first round goes into the second round, actually the 2 first candidates, and in the second round, the simple majority takes the win. All major political parties are discredited, or they're very, very low in their ranking. In fact, it was the case when Macron ran for president, and he basically created his own party a couple of months before the elections called En Marche. In marching, and so that he kind of demonstrated that it's possible to create a new political organization and win, and in that sense it kind of encourages Eric Zemmour to do the same. Now, the French political spectrum basically is the establishment political parties, which are the Republicans, which is the Gaullists, which is the sort of conservative right. Then what they call the extreme right, even though she's not an extreme right, is Assemblée Nationale, which is Marine Le Pen. So this is the conservative wing. And there are 3 major ones in the left wing: the communists, the socialists, and the Greens. Now these 3 are not doing very well. The Green, Mélenchon, he got about 1/3 of the vote last time around, and the Socialists and Communists are totally wiped out, and today they're standing at about 5 or 6% each. Now the big battle is among the Conservatives and who is going to represent the Republicans, which means the Gaullist party. And then there is this huge, kind of a rivalry between Marine Le Pen and Eric Zemmour. But first of all, who is Eric Zemmour? He's never been in government. He's the author of the books, and he's a publicist as a great debater. I watched a whole lot of his debates, and he's absolutely fantastic as a debater. He does not interrupt. He listens to what people have to say, and then he fires back. And it's absolutely devastating. So there's a big chance that he could actually win in his debate with Macron. In fact, when he was asked why he's running, he says he's running because, well, he's not officially running, but he wants to prevent the situation of the last time around, 2017, when Marine Le Pen got lost in her debate with Macron, and she didn't know a couple of things to answer about EU, about economic policy, and he beat her. Now, my impression is that he said so himself. He wants to beat Macron in debate, and he can do it better than Le Pen, and therefore he thinks he's got a chance. Now, politically, he's very similar to Le Pen, which is so-called far right, which is anti-immigration party, but in fact he's much more than Le Pen. And in this video, and perhaps in the next, I'll try to explain what his worldview is and why he's different than the traditional anti-immigration party. Eric Zemmour is written several books that pretty much explain his position. One of them is called Destin Française, which is the destiny of France. The last one, France has not said the last word yet. And then also another one translated into English, Into the Abyss. So in all of his books, he describes very, very well what he's against, what he's for, and how he wants to achieve it. In a nutshell, it's a conservative platform against what I would say two major enemies. One is the liberal, socialist, leftist establishment in France and in the European Union, and the second one, he's very, very radical and quite powerful and forceful opposition to immigration and to radical Islam. He says outrageous things. He's not afraid. He's ostracized by the French media. In fact, one of the major channels recently told him he's not welcome there. And then they said that he will only be welcome if he's officially proclaimed as a candidate in the elections. He's very popular precisely because he says outrageous things and because he is an anti-establishment figure. Today, there's a tremendous upheaval in France, as you all know, the Gilets jaunes movement against the prices. The public opinion say that the prices and the purchasing power is number one priority. The second one is security, and the third one is immigration. And on all three issues, Eric Zemmour has something to say, and something quite interesting. My purpose here is to explain very briefly what he stands for, and especially about things that are distorted by the French press. The American press hardly says anything about him at all. The French press distorts what I believe his views. They portray him as a divisive, as anti-European, as a racist, as anti-Muslim. He denies all of this. He says he has nothing against Islam religion. He has nothing against legal immigrants, etc., etc. And he does accept that he is very much against the European Union the way it is now. So, on the French government, he basically says that the French government today is for careers and not for ideas. That ideas have long been gone since the French government. In a sense, he's referring to a question that was asked of President Macron when he ran. What is he running for and why? And he said to make French government plus efficace, which means more efficient. And that's the whole point, Eric Zemmour says. It's not about efficiency. All these bureaucrats are only talking about efficiency. I'm talking about a new kind of government, a government for the people and by the people, and not for bureaucracy. His main idea of the French government is that it's been hijacked by globalist elites, as he calls them, globalist, socialist, leftist elites, who pushed in their LGBT agenda and their un-national agenda, erasing national identity, national borders, national anything, in favor of some kind of global markets that are only destroying jobs in France, and one could add in the United States as well. So he's very much anti-globalist. And from that point of view, because he's anti-globalist, he's against EU the way it is now, and I'll explain why. And of course against French government, which he feels is powerless and is nothing more than an instrument in the hands of the globalist elites who run the European Union. European Union it deserves a lot of his contempt and criticism, because he thinks it's a union of big corporations. It denies national identity as a matter of principle. It's a dictatorship of the liberal leftist elites. It is a dictatorship of the LGBT lobby that is completely in control of the mass media, of the universities, and it pushes its agenda onto what used to be Catholic conservative France. He also accuses EU of its policy of open doors, and open borders, welcoming immigration in their millions, who changed the social and political and ethnic landscape of Europe and of France. All of this he's against. He also says that the judges who passed this so-called human rights law is actually used against human rights because it pushes the open border policy that anybody from anywhere in the world can claim asylum in Europe, and France must comply. And this is ridiculous because there are millions and millions of people all over the world who would like to come to Europe and France, and that doesn't mean that they have a right to, but according to the Human Rights Declaration of European courts, they do, and he wants to change that. Now, he also, very much is in favor of Orban, the Hungarian leader, and recently of the quarrel between the Polish government and the EU. He says bravo to the Poles because his plan is exactly identical. He says over and over again that the European law must be subordinate to the French law, and France should not be taking orders from European judges who force her to do whatever they want because of the law that they passed without any consent of the people. So he's for the supremacy of national law, and if he's elected, he says he's going to have a referendum, and France, as a founding nation of the European Union, will have some say in how to reform it. His idea is that European Union should be what it was and not what it has become. It should be a union of sovereign states rather than a union state. Once it's not one state, it shouldn't be one state. And the more European bureaucracy in Brussels begins to treat governments as their subordinate bureaucracies, the more rebellions there would be. It should be restored to a common market, and the only things in common should be that which the nations who joined that union want to share, such as defense, ecological policy, control of common borders, movement of goods and services, etc., etc., but not erasing national identity, not pushing LGBT agenda, and not forcing countries to accept ever-growing number of immigrants. Now, on the foreign affairs, since we're talking about a little bit about USA, NATO, and France's place in Europe. Of course, he's totally against all of the three, which means he's against the US dictates. And I should say that this is a huge topic that all French political parties were absolutely in arms over the recent United States new alliance AUKUS with Britain and Australia, the cancellation of the submarines that were supposed to be made in France. All political parties, not just Zemmour, call it a stab in the back. Zemmour openly says that NATO is outdated, that America is using France, using Germany as their vassals for their imperial ambitions in China, and that France has no interest in fighting China or in defending Taiwan or in pursuing control of the Pacific, and so on and so forth. He's in that sense he is a Trumpist in saying France is first, but he is obviously against U.S. policy in Europe, U.S. control of Europe, of the European Union, and of Germany. This is his biggest problem, because he's in favor of France being in unity with Germany as its closest partner, but he believes Germans are under the thumb of the Americans, and therefore, by implications, France is a subordinate power to the United States too. All that has to change. You go back to the Gaullist idea of independent France, European common defense, cancellation of NATO, and not just French membership of NATO, but NATO as such. That is something. And France should be looking for other allies. And like Trump, he is in favor of good relations with Russia. Now, just a couple words of Trump, and then I finish. he says Trump was a good try to unify the workers, and he uses the French word the bourgeoisie against the establishment. He congratulates Trump on trying to restore a nation state and closing the borders and limiting immigration. He congratulates Trump on his fight to stop destruction of monuments and national heritage. He goes much farther than Trump in his attack on the dictatorship of the LGBT in schools. I'll come back to that cultural topic. And at the same time, he's not a narcissist like Trump. He does have a TV station, which Trump didn't. He does not have a political machine of a political party, which Trump also didn't have. And is not dependent as much on money in the French political campaign as Trump was. Anyway, it's a separate issue to compare him to Trump. I think he's a much better debater, and he's a much more convincing speaker than Trump was. But there are certain similarities, and one could say that this is a conservative revolutionary a la Trump in France. Subscribe to my channel, and I welcome you in my next videos. Thank you.